My wife lied about being sick to quit her job while I worked 90-hour weeks, so exposed everything and walked away without saying a word. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and for the past 2 years, I've been working 90-hour weeks to keep our lives afloat. I work in finance, a job that never really ends when you leave the office. The emails follow you home, the phone buzzes through dinner, and your brain never stops spinning numbers. Most days blur together, a haze of cold coffee, fluorescent lights, and conference calls that drag into the night. But I kept going because I thought I was doing it for us. My wife, Claire, used to be a marketing executive. Sharp, confident, the kind of woman who could light up a room and pitch anything to anyone. A year ago, she told me she wasn't feeling well. Constant fatigue, headaches, dizziness that just wouldn't go away. Doctors couldn't find much, and she eventually said she couldn't keep working. I remember her voice trembling when she said, "I think I need to quit." I didn't hesitate. I told her I'd handle everything. That's what you do when the person you love is struggling. You step up. So I did. I took extra shifts, said yes to every client, every deal. My boss called me the machine. My coworkers joked I was setting myself up for burnout. Maybe I was. But when I got home and saw Claire lying on the couch, looking pale and exhausted, I told myself it was worth it. I cooked dinner most nights, pasta, soups, whatever I could manage after a 14-hour day. She'd whisper, "You're my rock," and I'd smile through the fatigue. Love, I thought, was supposed to be about sacrifice. But lately, that word feels heavier than it should. And though I didn't know it then, the very thing I thought made me a good husband was about to become the reason my life unraveled. Started subtly little changes in our daily rhythm that I brushed off as part of her recovery. Claire began sleeping later, sometimes until noon. She said mornings made her dizzy. I'd tiptoe around, making coffee quietly, trying not to disturb her. When I got home, she'd be wrapped in a blanket, pale under the glow of the TV, claiming another wave of fatigue had hit. I believed her without question. You don't accuse your sick wife of anything, you just help. But the signs were small and strange. She'd complain about migraines, but scroll on her phone for hours. I'd hear faint laughter from the living room late at night when she was supposedly asleep. One evening, I came home early and caught a glimpse of her dancing around the kitchen. Phone in hand, music blaring until she saw me. Then, instantly her shoulders dropped, her voice trembled. "You scared me." I was trying to move a bit. Doctor said, "Light exercise helps." I swallowed the doubt and apologized for startling her at work. Started turning down lunches and staying later to cover extra expenses. Hospital bills, supplements, therapy, it all added up. My coworkers told me I looked pale, that my eyes had that dead screen glow. I laughed it off. "Marriage," I said, as if the exhaustion was something noble at home. Claire began mentioning her bad days more frequently, her voice soft but persuasive. "I tried to get up today," she'd whisper, "but my head, it's like gravity doubled." So I'd clean the house, make dinner, and remind her she didn't owe me anything. She'd smile weakly, "You're too good for me." Those words used to make me feel proud. Now they just echo in my mind, because somewhere deep down, a part of me wonders if she already knew I'd do anything to keep believing her. By the 3rd month, our savings started to vanish like water down a drain. Claire's treatment wasn't cheap. Doctor visits, expensive vitamins, even alternative therapies she found online. Every week a new package arrived at our door. Supplements, scented oils, ergonomic pillows, all promising to restore her energy. I didn't question it. I just worked harder. I sold my car first, said it was better for the environment. But really it was to pay for her prescriptions. Then went the gym membership, the streaming services, the small luxuries that once made the grind tolerable. My friends invited me out less and less. I couldn't afford the time or the bill. The few times I did meet them, they'd glance at my wrinkled shirt or the dark circles under my eyes and say, "Man, you're burning out." I'd force a smile and say, "Claire needs me right now." At home, the atmosphere was heavy, not from her sickness, but from the silence. I'd walk in and see her on the couch, scrolling her phone, surrounded by half-open delivery boxes. "Did the package for the magnesium come today?" she'd ask, without looking up. When I'd remind her that we were tight on money, she'd pout and say, "You think I want to feel like this?" Still, I couldn't bring myself to argue. I kept telling myself she was fighting her own battle. But then came the credit card statements, charges for beauty products, spa treatments, even a salon visit. My stomach twisted, but I rationalized it away. Maybe she's trying to feel normal again. But late one night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, I realized something I hadn't before. I was exhausted, drowning in work, and alone in a house that didn't feel like a partnership anymore. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I'd never dared to feel toward her before: resentment. The first crack in my blind trust came on a Thursday night. I was still at the office, bleary-eyed, finishing reports for a client in Singapore. Around p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Claire's number, but it wasn't meant for me. It read, "He's still at work. We can call now," my heart stuttered. For a second, I thought maybe it was a friend. Maybe she was talking about a family call. But the wording felt wrong. My hands hovered over the keyboard before I finally replied, "Call who?" The message was deleted before I could even see the typing dots appear. When I got home later that night, Claire was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her breathing was too steady, too deliberate. The next morning, she acted normal. Sweet, fragile, asking me to bring her breakfast in bed. I studied her face as she talked about how rough the night had been. There was no trace of guilt, no hesitation. Just calm, maybe to calm. That's when I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way she sprang up when I left for work but claimed she couldn't move when I came home. The perfectly applied makeup on her bad days. The faint smell of perfume that didn't match the one she owned. One evening, I got home earlier than usual and heard laughter. Her laughter echoing from the living room. The TV was off. By the time I stepped inside, she was back on the couch, blanket over her eyes half closed. "You're home early," she whispered, voice hoarse. I was just resting. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, the text replaying in my mind. He's still at work. Who was she talking to? And what else was she hiding? I told myself I wouldn't snoop. That's what guilty or paranoid people did, right? But the text haunted me. Every late night at work, every quiet dinner where she stared blankly at her phone, it replayed in my mind. So one weekend, when she said she needed quiet time to rest, I bought a small home camera. I told her it was for security. She nodded, barely listening. Her eyes glued to her tablet. I placed it discreetly, a tiny device tucked between photo frames on the shelf. Then I waited. The next few days were torture. I checked my phone every chance I got, wondering if I'd gone too far. But curiosity doesn't whisper, it screams. When I finally watched the footage, my stomach turned cold. Claire wasn't sick. Not even close. The moment I left for work, she was up, stretching, cooking, blasting music, and FaceTiming someone. She danced around the living room in yoga pants, laughing, hair done perfectly. Later, she lounged on the couch with wine, scrolling social media, her face lit by the phone screen. Not a trace of pain. That night I watched hours of it, her singing, snacking, even hosting a friend. They drank, giggled, and joked about how hard her life was. Couldn't move. I just stared, numb. Everything I'd worked for, every overtime hour, every sleepless night, was built on her lie. I didn't confront her. Not yet. The anger wasn't ready to explode. It was still simmering, thick and quiet, like the air before a storm. She smiled at me when I came home that night. "You look tired," she said sweetly, handing me a plate of reheated pasta. If she noticed the way I looked at her, the way my eyes lingered a second too long. She didn't show it, and that's when I knew she wasn't just lying to me. She was performing, I thought. Catching her faking her illness was the worst of it. I thought maybe she was just lonely, bored, or lost after quitting her job. But the truth was darker, and it started with her old laptop. She hadn't used it in months, but one morning when she was out at a doctor's appointment, I noticed it open on the dining table. The screen was asleep, but curiosity tugged at me like a rope around my neck. I opened it telling myself I just wanted to know what was really going on. In her emails, I found messages from her former boss dated months before she claimed to be sick. The truth hit like ice water. She hadn't been fired. She had quit. Voluntarily. The reason? She'd been demoted for performance issues and refused to accept it. One email from HR confirmed it, as per your decision to resign effective immediately. We'll process your final paycheck. But that wasn't the worst part. In her chat logs with a friend, someone named Lily, I found screenshots and voice notes of her laughing. He's still working like a maniac, one message said. I finally get to rest, while he kills himself for both of us. Her friend replied with laughing emojis. Another message read, I might fake a relapse next week. He gets more attentive when I do. I sat there, my chest hollow, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat on the screen. Every sleepless night, every overtime shift, all of it had been fuel for her convenience. That night, I came home to her lying in bed, the room dimly lit by candlelight. Rough day? She murmured. I just stared at her, at the woman who'd turned my loyalty into a game. No, I said quietly. Just enlightening. She smiled faintly, unaware that I'd finally seen the truth, and that my silence wasn't trust anymore. It was preparation. After that night, something in me shifted. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was an observer trapped inside my own life, quietly watching the woman I thought I knew play a role she'd perfected. Claire's performance grew even more convincing, almost as if she sensed a storm brewing and doubled down on her innocence. She'd groan when getting up, wince at bright light, sigh dramatically whenever I walked into the room. But behind those fragile gestures, I saw it, a flicker of calculation in her eyes. Can you bring me some tea? She'd ask softly, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. I'd hand it over without a word. She'd smile faintly, resting her head on the pillow. You're my angel. I don't know what I'd do without you. The old me would have melted hearing that. Now I just nodded, pretending to check my phone while secretly forwarding screenshots of her emails and texts to a hidden folder. I documented everything, bank statements, timestamps, recordings of her sick days. I even synced the footage from the hidden camera to a secure drive. Every file was a brick in the quiet wall I was building between us. The hardest part wasn't pretending. It was sleeping beside her, knowing she'd weaponized my love, and still managed to look peaceful doing it. Sometimes I'd wake up and watch her breathing softly, and I'd wonder how much of our marriage had been real. Was there ever a version of us where she saw me as more than a wallet with a heartbeat? During the day, I played my role perfectly. I laughed at her jokes, offered comfort when she faked pain, and listened when she told friends over the phone how lucky she was to have me. But inside, the man she thought she was manipulating was gone. What remained was someone calm, patient, and quietly planning the moment. She'd finally face herself without the mask I used to think burnout was just a word. Something people threw around to justify a bad day, but it's real. It's the moment your body stops caring that your mind won't rest. I learned that the hard way. Months of pretending, of working myself into the ground while living beside a lie, finally caught up to me. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a presentation when the world tilted sideways. The next thing I remember, I was on the floor, my boss shouting my name. Hospital lights, for tubes, that sterile chemical smell, it all blurred together. The doctor said it was exhaustion. Severe. You need rest, he warned. Your body is giving up before you do. Claire arrived hours later, mascara running like she'd sprinted from a movie set. Oh my God, baby, she gasped, gripping my hand. You scared me half to death. Her voice trembled just right, but there was no depth behind her eyes. She sat beside me, scrolling her phone every few minutes while I lay there, numb and hollow. When the doctor left, I asked her softly, Do you even realize how much I've been working? She smiled faintly. You shouldn't push yourself so hard. You always do this. That line looped in my mind. The deflection, the absence of guilt, it was all so rehearsed. I stared at her hand in mine and felt nothing. No warmth, no connection, just the realization that if I died right there, she'd probably post a tribute photo before the machines even cooled down that night. Lying in that hospital bed, I made a silent promise. When I got out, I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't beg, and I wouldn't explain. I'd just let the truth burn quietly and leave her standing in the ashes. When I was discharged, Claire fussed over me like a devoted wife, fluffing pillows and promising to take better care of me. Her voice was soft, her tone guiltless, the performance of a lifetime. But inside, I'd gone quiet. Something colder, steadier had taken root. I didn't want confrontation anymore. I wanted clarity. Proof so undeniable that even her own lies would collapse under its weight. While she thought I was resting, I spent my nights building my case. I exported the hidden camera footage, saved every chat, every transaction, and created a detailed timeline of her deception. I even compiled her fake medical claims and the resignation emails she'd hidden. Each file was labeled and backed up twice. Every shred of evidence painted the same picture, not of a sick woman, but of a master manipulator who'd turned empathy into income. Then came the delicate part, her family. They adored her, always saw her as the fragile artist soul who'd married the overworked husband. So I called her parents and calmly asked if they could host a dinner, saying Claire had great news about her recovery. They were thrilled, promising to make it special. Claire, of course, lit up when I mentioned it. "You're doing this for me?" she asked, eyes glistening. "Of course," I said, and for once, it wasn't a lie. That weekend, I spent hours preparing a simple slideshow under the pretext of showing our journey through her illness. But instead of pictures of hospitals or medication, it contained the truth, the footage, the messages, the timestamps. The final slide simply read, "She wasn't sick. She just didn't want to work." By the time I hit save, my hands were steady. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. All that was left was to press play and let her world shatter on its own. The night of the dinner, everything felt eerily calm, like the silence before a storm. Claire spent the afternoon getting ready, humming softly as she curled her hair. "It feels good to have energy again," she joked, completely unaware of how literal that statement was. I smiled faintly, buttoning my shirt, my heartbeat slow but heavy. I wasn't nervous, just resolved. Her parents' house smelled like rosemary and roasted chicken when we arrived. Warm, inviting, deceptively normal. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes. "You look radiant, sweetheart," she said. Claire squeezed my hand and whispered, "See? They're so happy." I nodded, my jaw tight. After dinner, I cleared my throat. Before dessert, I put together something special to celebrate Claire's recovery. I connected my laptop to their TV, the lights dimmed, and the slideshow began. The first image was a smiling photo of us wedding day, champagne glasses raised. The next, a time-stamped clip of Claire, perfectly healthy, dancing in the living room. Her laughter filled the room, but this time it echoed like a confession. Slide after slide revealed more texts to her friend bragging, her resignation email, bank statements, camera footage of her shopping trips. Claire froze, her face draining of color. "Turn it off," she whispered. Her father leaned forward, disbelief hardening into anger. "Claire," he said slowly, "what is this?" She stammered, tears welling up. It's not what it looks like." I was stressed. I needed, but I didn't let her finish. I stood up, looked at her once, the woman who'd drained every part of me, and said quietly, "You wanted rest? Now you'll have all the time in the world." I pulled the signed divorce papers from my pocket, set them on the table, and walked out. Behind me, the room erupted, her mother crying, her father shouting, Claire, calling my name. But I didn't turn back. Not once. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful. Didn't go home that night. I didn't even take the usual route back. I just drove past the city, the blinking streetlights, the memories that still smelled like her perfume. I ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town. The room was small and quiet, with peeling wallpaper and a single lamp that buzzed faintly. For the first time in years, no one was waiting for me. And strangely, that emptiness felt like freedom. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages, dozens of them. Claire, her parents, even her friends. "Please, Can we talk? I can explain. You humiliated me. The words blurred together. I didn't reply to a single one. I blocked her number, deleted our photos, and closed the shared bank accounts. Within 48 hours, every trace of our life together was gone, except the memories that still hurt to breathe. Through mutual friends, I eventually heard she'd moved back with her parents. Word spread about what happened at dinner. Her family couldn't look her in the eye. She lost a few friends who'd believed her act, and the ones who stayed did so out of pity. Apparently, she tried getting her old job back, but her boss had already seen the emails I forwarded, the ones where she mocked her coworkers and faked her illness. She was rejected instantly. There was a time I would have felt sorry for her, but not anymore. Not after realizing how easily she'd watched me destroy myself for her comfort. One night, while scrolling through old messages, I found a note she'd written me during the first month of her sickness. It said, "You're my hero." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it, because heroes save people, and I'd finally saved myself. Months passed before I finally felt like a human again. The constant tightness in my chest had loosened, replaced by a quiet steadiness I hadn't felt in years. I moved into a smaller apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just mine. No pretenses, no fake sympathy, no shadows of someone pretending to be fragile. Every morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, and I'd just sit there drinking coffee without an agenda. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, like a sigh after years of holding your breath. Claire tried reaching out one last time. A long email. She wrote about mental health, stress, losing herself. She ended it with, "I miss what we had." I read it once, not out of curiosity, but closure. Then I deleted it without replying. There was nothing left to say. She wanted pity. I wanted peace. We both got what we deserved. In time, people stopped asking about her. Colleagues noticed I was calmer, sharper, not working out of desperation anymore. I picked up old hobbies again, even started running after work instead of staying late. Every time my feet hit the pavement, thought about those endless nights she said she was too weak to move, while I was too loyal to question her. The thought used to sting. Now, it just reminded me of the cost of ignoring my own boundaries. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the city, I realized something simple but powerful. I didn't need revenge that screamed. Mine was quiet. It was living well, healing fully, and leaving her to face herself without an audience. She lied to escape work. I worked to escape her lie. And in the end, the truth did what I never could. It dismantled everything she built, so I walked away and never looked back. Because sometimes the loudest justice isn't a confrontation. It's silence, and the peace that finally follows it.